the include and the exclude. These two are very specifically. So the fixed one is going to be, so we start by, besides the fixed, which is the one you're going to use the most because it enables you the most specific power, let's say, to create a calculation linked to one level of detail, let's say. So fixing is going to enable you to very specifically calculate one metric or one value linked to that level of detail. Let's say you are looking at a visualization being a main category, or inside that segment you have main categories, and linked to those main categories you have subcategories, and then you go down to the lowest level being a individual product name. So that's some kind of a hierarchy. I will go to a practical example in a bit in Tableau itself. I always like to switch between the tool and the presentation to show you what the concept we just talked about means in Tableau itself. But first, we of course need this introduction to see when we are going to use which kind of calculation. So besides the fixed, we have two more specific LOD expressions, being the include expression and the exclude expression. When we want to include, so the slide we are looking at here on the screen is showing on the left side a kind of hierarchy when we are going to use which calculation. And the level of detail, the visualizations level of detail, is the dotted line. So that's some kind of aggregation we are on in our visualization, and this gives us a certain granularity, a certain grain of detail that is present on our visualization. And if we include metrics like the profit or the sales, it is divided by that level of detail. But let's say we want to look at that same number, but one level deeper. So we are looking at one main overview of all our main categories, but we want to calculate or put next to those main categories an average of all those subcategories. That will be a lower level detail because we are looking at one level deeper. Then we want to include that in a calculation. That result put into the visualization next to that higher level category will show that number without the detail being present in the visualization itself. So it allows us to go one level deeper without changing our construction of that visualization, without changing the structure. Exclude is just the opposite of an include. An exclude, it will be, we have a certain detail on our visualization, and that detail is already on a certain level, but we want to use a higher level of detail, a higher level of detail being, let's say we are looking at those subcategories in this case, and we want to compare it to the value of those main categories. Then we will exclude that lower level to go up to the higher level. But this will say more in practice, let's say. So I'm gonna go to Tableau and show you for the first time how this behaves in Tableau itself. So if we go to Tableau itself, so like the slide of Tableau itself says, we have a certain level of detail. So we see an overview of our canvas right here, and the middle part is where we construct our visualization itself. And that is where our structure will generate a certain level of detail and also a certain granularity. Granularity meaning the amount of detail that is present in our visualization itself. And we see the columns and the rows highlighted, and also a few elements of the marks card. This means that those are places where we can put dimensions to increase or decrease the amount of detail that is in our visualization. And those level of detail calculations will make it possible to get the detail that is in our visualization and decouple it, let's say, make it separated from that level of detail and separate that calculation from that level and isolate a value that stands alone, let's say. And that makes it easy then to use that value and compare the detail that is in the view to a higher or lower level. And those higher and lower levels of detail, they can be reached by using the include and exclude capability of the Tableau level of detail calculations. If we look at an example for an include calculation, so I'm going to go over these examples a little bit slower and a little bit more in detail than yesterday. So we are looking at the result of this practical example. So very specifically, an example for an include level of detail. We're going to look at these subcategories. These subcategories, they make up the structure of this visualization. So this is the level of detail of this visualization being subcategory, and dividing our overall profit in the data source is now divided over all those subcategories, let's say. And that's Tableau's way of working with measures and dimensions on our visualization and assigning the correct amount of profit to their subcategory. That is how Tableau works in the visualization on the spot. So depending on the structure and the amount of detail, it will assign those correct values. But in this case, we are interested in looking how many unprofitable products, so products is one level lower than the subcategory we are looking at in this visualization specifically. So how many of those products, percentage-wise, are unprofitable? So first off, we will need to identify an unprofitable product and assign it a true-false kind of test. And those true-false kinds of tests are going to give us ones or zeros. So if we take a look at this calculation, the number of unprofitable products per subcategory. If we take a look, I made also a little bit of a text to guide us through this calculation. So like yesterday, I am going to isolate the true-false test we are going to do for every product, let's say. So if I paste that one in this calculation again, and I comment out the main calculation that is going to give us that percentage, that's the end goal in this case, and I'm going to use that one. So you can see all these red fields coming up. I'm going to use that one to test our, is this product profitable inside this subcategory, or is it a unprofitable category? Product category is our main level of detail in this case. Subcategory. That's the structure of the visualization. One level lower gives us our products. So we have a lot of products per subcategory. And now we are going to drag in our profit because it's that one we are going to test. All right. And maybe to make it a little bit more clear, we will keep it on a text level to visualize. So we see a few minor profits, and we also see a few negative ones, like this 7th row here, -12, and we have other ones as well. And our test will identify those as unprofitable products. And the end result, we are going to take a look at how many of those products inside every subcategory are going to be unprofitable. That amount of unprofitable product ones, so the count of those, divided by the total amount of profits inside that subcategory, that is actually what was displayed in the end result of that calculation. But now our calculation, remember, I've now changed it only to look at all the product names. When the sum of the profit is lower than 0, then it is an unprofitable one. So put a 1 next to that line. Otherwise, put a 0. So the ones and the zeros are going to identify when it's unprofitable or profitable. Let's take a look at what this calculation will do in this case. So we see a lot of zeros being correct in that case, that this one is not an unprofitable product. It is a profitable one. With the -12 on our 7th line here, we have -12 as the profit, and our calculation indicates, yes, this is an unprofitable product. This will be done for the total amount of around 2,000 products in this visualization. So this calculation does it on a row based on these products. Now we are going to go to that end result. So if I take out the product name now, we can see the total amount of unprofitable products per subcategory. And why is that? Because I have now included with the terminology for a level of detail the product name. And remember that an include is to go one level deeper than the visualization level. I have included the product name, and I have then done that logical test to see if that profit is negative or not negative. And it keeps that lower level because I have included it in the background, let's say. And that's why it accounts for those 7 values of products where it's unprofitable. For appliances, it's for 15. For appliances, it's 15 products that are unprofitable, and so on and so on. And what we do with our calculation, the finished one, is actually taking a look at the total amount. So our test is still included. So this is our ones and zeros to go over the fact if it's a positive or negative. And we are going to take that total amount and divide it by the total amount of products that are in our data set per subcategory. And that's what's going to give us that percentage result. So the percentage also gets calculated into one calculation, but our logical test is the one that displays the capability of including one level deeper concerning the information we need to grab to compare that one to a higher level. So that comparison. So now I've changed the calculation, and Tableau needs me to put that one back in our visualization because I've messed with it a little bit, let's say, and then it needs to reassign it to the visualization to know how to aggregate for that subcategory in general, let's say. So we are still looking at profit per subcategory. We have not changed anything to that level of detail, let's say, because the detail is still our subcategory, being 17 subcategories in total. And those 2,000 products are included in that calculation for that specific purpose. And that generates the fact that we can make a comparison of 5% of all our products in accessories are unprofitable, but still mainly for our full subcategory, we are still profitable with $41,000, let's say. And that's what we get as a result in that first example of our include calculation. We can compare the first column, a comparison with one level deeper in the information, and the last column is just our profit divided by our subcategories. I'm going to take a look at the chat from time to time, otherwise it's on top of my screen, let's say, to see if there is anything unclear up until this point, let's say. So okay, I see there are no questions so far. I see someone had to rejoin, and I see also someone asking the fact if these slides get shared on YouTube or not. To be completely honest, where they get shared, I don't know yet. I'll try and figure that one out towards the end of the session. Normally, I think they will be shared through our website, where we can find as well the link to these webinars itself. So, but I'll try and get some clarity on that topic as well. All right. But I'm also happy that the sound stays stable. I don't get everybody trying to hear me well, so that's already not a problem. I'm glad. Please do use this chat to stop me if some of these concepts are not clear. Then we will move on to, it's a more simple example, let's say, to instruct and show the capability of the exclude calculation. All right. So the exclude calculation, to be completely honest, I'm a big user of the fixed one and the include one. Exclude, I don't use it that often because it's for me, I haven't come across the very specific business cases, let's say, to use it. But exclude is just like we have a certain level of detail, which is more detailed, and we want to compare a higher level. Like in this case, we have our regions. We have 4 regions, and we have per region 3 main categories of products we are selling. And in this case, on the left, we color based on a higher level. And that way we have to indicate that higher level with that exclude level of detail calculation. We will see in a bit how that one is constructed. And on the right side, we see a standard coloring based on all our sales values in this view, and all our sales values in this view are determined by the lower level, and the lowest level in this case is that category combined with region. So we have 12 individual values that will make up the color, and otherwise on the left we have only 4 individual members that will make our coloring. And to do that, we have the exclude capability of the Tableau level of detail expressions, let's say. So we have 2 values in here, so we have multiple marks cards, and the first one is going to hold our coloring based on excluding the category. And this is nothing more as to select, to create a calculation, let's say, and start off with using the correct terminology. And I have firstly shown you an example that was already ready to use. Now I'm going to show you how we start off for creating an LOD, let's say. So you have seen an example ready. Now we'll start off creating a completely new one. So by going to create calculation on the drop-down arrow on the left in data pane, we have multiple ways of creating calculations, but I think that's clear for most people. This is my preferred way of creating a calculation. So I'm going to name my calculation the sales with region let's say category excluded. Because that's that lower level that I want to exclude to color by. All right. So to start off with a calculation being a level of detail calculations, we can start off by starting with our brackets itself, because these are very specific curly brackets, and that's an indication that a level of detail calculation is in use. Or if we already know which kind of level of detail calculation we are going to construct, we will start with our key value being the fixed, exclude, or include. In this case, it's an exclude. You can already see if I start typing, I get that suggestion. If I enter that suggestion, you see also that Tableau gives me that keyword and also the necessary curly bracket to start off that level of detail expression. And now completely on the right in our calculation editor, in our help side, actually, it gives us an indication of what we need to construct this calculation. All right. The dimension we want to exclude in this case is the category. So I enter that dimension in there, and now the syntax requires me to use a double point, let's say. So if I give that one, after that I need to give in my result calculation. What do I need to calculate based on the detail you have very specifically included, or in this case exclude, but you have included it in the definition of the calculation. And now we need to indicate what result this calculation needs to give based on that level of detail. So in my case, I'm now going to give that sales. And I'm typing this sales, and there is still something wrong with my calculation. Always know you can go over the error message itself and get a result of what we need to do to resolve for that error. And I've typed this very purposely. I always need an aggregate result for a level of detail calculation. So you can see a result of a level of detail expression must be an aggregate. And also on the right side, it already indicated that I need an aggregate expression as a result of that level of detail calculation. So to resolve in this case, I'm gonna give you sum of sales. Need to close this bracket as well. And now my expression is correct. We are indicating very specific levels of detail in the calculation itself. So Tableau already knows to what extent it needs to aggregate to, and that's why it needs an aggregation in the end to give you that result. That's why it needs that aggregation up front. If I now apply this calculation, sales with category excluded, I now see it's ready there. And I can compare it with the one we used. I can put it over here. And you can see those distinct colors. It's in blue because I haven't changed the color correctly. If I also use it for orange red, orange blue, you can see that I have 4 very distinct colors instead of all individual colors per bar. That's because I have excluded that lower level, being the category, excluded in this case very specifically, and I'm now only coloring based on those 4 individual values in the visualization. I think now we have perfectly covered, let's say, the two include exclude capabilities. Let's go back for a moment to our PowerPoint again. So to repeat once more, an include LOD represents a less aggregated and more granular measure. All right. The include expression is either a measure or an aggregate measure. Yes. All right. And an exclude LOD represents a more aggregated being less detail. Less aggregated meaning more detail. All right.